My fiancé of 8 months just told me he's not sure he wants to marry me. Then his mom called me, sobbing, saying we needed to talk. I'm sitting in my car outside the cafe where I'm supposed to meet her, and I have no idea what's coming. But I know my life is about to change. Jake and I were together for 5 years. We met at a friend's birthday bash, bonding over a mutual love of terrible horror movies and a hatred of cilantro. It was easy, comfortable. We moved in together after 2 years, got a dog we named Buster, and got engaged last fall during a quiet weekend camping trip. No big spectacle, just us and the woods. It felt right. We set a date for this September. I threw myself into planning, venues, color schemes, tasting cakes. Jake was less involved, but I figured that was normal. He'd nod along when I showed him stuff and say, "Yeah, babe, whatever you think is best." But about 4 months ago, things started to feel off. When I'd get excited about a florist, he'd make a comment like, "Seems like a lot for flowers that are just gonna die." He started working later, hanging out more with his buddy Travis from the gym. When he was home, he was distant, scrolling on his phone instead of talking. My best friend, Nina, said it was probably just pre-wedding jitters. So last Friday, I planned a nice dinner at our favorite spot to reconnect. I put on the dress he always said he liked, the whole deal. It backfired hard. Halfway through our main course, after I'd asked about finalizing the honeymoon flights, he put his fork down. He looked me in the eye and said, "I'm just not sure I'm ready for all of this. The wedding, the marriage, everything." I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. 5 years. An engagement. And now he wasn't sure? I managed to keep it together until we got home, but the second we were inside, I lost it. We had a huge fight. He said he felt pressured, that Travis had been talking about how marriage ties you down. He ended up sleeping on the couch. The next morning was awful. We moved around the apartment like ghosts. He said he was going to meet Travis and some guys to watch the game at a sports bar. I was too numb to even care. I just wanted him gone. A few hours later, I got a text from his coworker Ryan. We're friendly, but not close. The text just said, "Hey, are you okay? Things got a little weird at the bar with Jake." My stomach sank. I called him immediately. After some hesitation, Ryan told me. The guys were giving Jake a hard time about the wedding, asking if he was sure he was ready to be a married man. And Jake, apparently after a few too many beers, laughed and said, "I'd be more sure if she made more money, you know? Takes the pressure off me." He tried to play it off as a joke, but Ryan said it landed like a lead balloon. I sat in my parked car and cried for 20 minutes straight. He wasn't unsure because of cold feet or fear or anything deep. It was about money. He'd reduced our 5-year relationship, our future, to a cruel punchline about my salary in front of his friends. When I finally went inside, he was passed out on the couch, smelling like a brewery. I went straight to bed and locked the door. The next morning, he was making pancakes, his classic "I messed up" breakfast. He looked rough. I didn't wait. I looked him dead in the eye and said, "So, how much money do I need to make for you to be excited to marry me?" His face went white. He started stammering, saying he was drunk, that the guys were writing him, that he just said something stupid to sound tough. "It's just guy talk, Sarah. It didn't mean anything." But it meant everything to me. I couldn't even look at him. I grabbed my purse and went to my sister's place. I've been here since, ignoring his texts and calls. And then, this morning, his mom, Carol, called. She was crying. She said Jake called her last night, a complete mess, and that there's something important I need to know. She asked to meet me, so now I'm here, in this parking lot, staring at the coffee shop door. The man I was supposed to marry humiliated me and questioned my worth based on my paycheck. What else could his mom possibly have to tell me that would make any of this worse? Walking into that coffee shop felt like walking to my own execution. Carol was already there, clutching a mug like it was a lifeline. She looked exhausted, her usually perfect hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. I slid into the booth across from her. "Carol," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "What's going on?" She took a shaky breath. "Jake called me last night. He's a wreck, Sarah.
But this isn't just about cold feet or some stupid comments at a bar. She hesitated, shredding a napkin. There's someone else at his work, a woman named Chloe. I heard the name. It echoed in my head. Jake had mentioned her a few times, the new project manager who started a few months ago. She's really efficient, he'd said once. I thought nothing of it.
According to Carol, nothing physical happened, but Jake had confessed to developing an emotional connection with her. He'd been talking to her about his stress, his doubts about the wedding, things he should have been talking to me about. He told his mom he felt understood by her in a way he hadn't felt with me in months. I sat there, numb, as Carol apologized through tears. She said watching Jake repeat his father's patterns, the emotional distance, the seeking validation elsewhere, was destroying her. She didn't want me to be left in the dark like she was. I drove back to my sister's apartment on autopilot. The pieces were clicking into a devastating picture. His distance, the late nights, the phone constantly face down. It wasn't just stress. It was her. As soon as I walked in, I texted Jake. No pleasantries. I know about Chloe. Don't contact me again until you're ready to tell me the whole truth. I blocked his number for the night. I needed the silence. But an hour later, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Hey Sarah, this is Chloe. I know you blocked Jake. Can we talk? There's more you should know. My blood ran cold. What kind of game was this?
I met Chloe the next day at a bland chain restaurant near the highway, neutral ground. I expected to see some confident, glamorous villain. Instead, I saw a woman who looked just as stressed as I felt. Her hands were shaking around her coffee cup. First, she said, not even waiting for me to sit down properly. Nothing happened between us. I have a boyfriend. I'm sorry you're going through this, but I need you to know that. She looked so genuine, so desperate to clear her name, that my anger momentarily shifted. She explained that Jake had latched onto her, misinterpreting their work friendship. She showed me their text chain. It was 90% about deadlines and meeting notes. Then she dropped the second bomb. It's his friend, Travis. He's been poisoning Jake for months. According to Chloe, Travis had been constantly in Jake's ear, telling him he was too young to be tied down, that he was settling, and even pointing to Chloe as his type and someone who got his career ambitions. She said Travis would mock our relationship in group settings, and Jake, instead of defending me, would laugh along to save face. The comment about my salary, that was a direct echo of Travis's jokes about gold diggers. I left that meeting feeling disoriented. The enemy wasn't this other woman. The enemy was the toxic friend my fiance had chosen over me and Jake's own weakness. I went straight to my sisters and called Jake's sister, Megan. We'd always been close. I told her everything. She wasn't even surprised. I heard Travis at our family BBQ last month, she said, her voice tight with anger, making snide comments about your wedding colors. I should have said something then. She agreed to help me organize a meeting, not just with Jake, with him, Carol, Megan, and Travis. I wanted everyone in the same room. I wanted to see the lies collapse in real time.
Megan hosted the intervention at her apartment 2 days later. The air was so thick with tension you could choke on it. Carol arrived first, giving my hand a quick secret squeeze. Then came Travis, looking annoyed and out of place. Finally, Jake shuffled in. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week. We all sat around Megan's small dining table, a plate of untouched cookies between us like some sad peace offering. For a few minutes, nobody spoke. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I looked directly at Travis. So, I said, my voice surprisingly calm, Chloe says you've been a real champion of my relationship. Jake's head snapped up. You talked to Chloe? Someone had to tell me the truth. Since you couldn't? Travis immediately got defensive. Whoa, I was just looking out for my bro. You can't blame me if he was having second thoughts. That's when Megan lost it. Don't you dare. You've been feeding him poison for months. Jokes about the wedding, about Sarah's job, even pointing out other women to him. What is wrong with you? I turned to Jake. And you ate it all up. You let this guy get in your head instead of talking to me, the woman you asked to marry you. Jake looked down at his hands. I was scared, he mumbled. Travis kept saying marriage changes everything, that I'd be trapped. I got in my own head. And what about Chloe? I asked, my voice starting to crack. Was that you being scared too? Developing feelings for someone else because your friend told you to keep your options open? The room went silent. Carol let out a small, pained sigh. Jake just stared at the table, completely defeated. In that moment, I saw it clearly. This wasn't a man ready to be a husband. This was a boy, easily swayed, who would rather blow up his life than stand up to a toxic friend. I took a deep breath. The words came out quiet but final. The wedding is off. The silence after I said those words was absolute. It was like all the sound in the world got sucked out of the room. Jake finally looked up, his eyes wide. Sarah, no! We can fix this. We can go to counseling, anything, please. But the fight had gone out of me. I was just empty. Fix what, Jake? I said, my voice flat. You didn't just get cold feet. You emotionally cheated. You humiliated me to your friends, and you let someone else dictate your feelings about our future. There's no coming back from that. Travis, of all people, scoffed. This is so dramatic. All couples go through stuff. Carol turned on him, her voice shaking with the fury I'd never seen from her. You need to leave right now. She didn't yell, but the command in her tone was undeniable. Travis looked at Jake, who just stared blankly ahead, offering no support. Muttering under his breath, Travis grabbed his jacket and left. The rest of the conversation was a blur of practical, heartbreaking details. Megan, ever the organizer, pulled out a notepad. We had to cancel the venue, the caterer, the photographer. My mind flashed to my wedding dress, hanging in the back of my sister's closet, a symbol of a future that was now just gone. I stood up to leave. Jake looked broken, but all I felt was a distant pity. I'll come by the apartment tomorrow while you're at work to get the rest of my things, I told him. It wasn't a question. He just nodded, tears in his eyes. I am so sorry, Sarah. I believed he was sorry, but sorry wasn't enough, not even close. As I walked out of Megan's apartment, I felt the weight of the last 5 years finally, completely lift off my shoulders, and underneath it was a terrifying, wide open space of uncertainty. The next week was a whirlwind of sad adult tasks. My sister came with me to his apartment to pack up my life. It was surreal, taking my books off the shelves, emptying my side of the closet. I left the throw pillows we'd argued over and took the ugly vase I'd always loved. It felt symbolic. Jake, to his credit, made himself scarce. He stayed at a friend's place and didn't contact me. The silence was a relief. The hardest call was to the venue. The coordinator was kind but firm. Our deposit was gone. $8,000 vanished into thin air. I hung up the phone and didn't even cry. I was all cried out. A week after the intervention, I was staying in my sister's spare room, surrounded by boxes, when my phone buzzed. It was Megan. Hey, she said, her voice cautious. Just so you hear from me, Jake moved out. He's renting a room from someone he works with. The apartment is empty. I thanked her, my throat tight. She then added, and for what it's worth, Mom and we'd still like to see you, if you want. No pressure. That small gesture of kindness undid me. I sat on the floor and sobbed, not just for the relationship I'd lost, but for the family I was terrified of losing too. A month later, I was signing the lease on my own one-bedroom apartment. It was smaller, further from my job, and the kitchen was kind of gross, but it was mine. The first night I slept there, surrounded by unpacked boxes, the silence was deafening, and then it was peaceful. I started therapy, not just to get over Jake, but to understand why I'd stayed so blind for so long. My therapist pointed out how I'd made excuses for his distance, how I'd prioritized his comfort over my own unease. It was a painful but necessary mirror. I unblocked Jake's number. We had to sort out the final bills, the last of the shared accounts.
Our texts were polite, sterile. I set up the cancellation for the internet. Thanks, I'll forward the final bill. It was over. Truly, completely over. One afternoon, I was in a grocery store and our song came on the radio. For a second, my heart clenched. I waited for the wave of grief to hit me, but it didn't. I just felt nothing. I finished picking out my avocados and moved on. It was the first time I knew, deep in my bones, that I was going to be okay.